the short straw for a hard-driving contender. And that's all for Joe Weatherly. Richard Petty comes in for a final fuel stop before the dash to the finish. Richard wants this trophy. Nothing is going to stand in the way of winning it, or will there? While Petty pits, Baker makes...
All right, welcome back down here to the Chiefs pit. Timmy Petty, Mark Petty, Richie Petty. We talk about our racing stories and our grandfather and dad's racing stories through the years, and sometimes we forget some of the things we've done, don't we? But we've all kind of drove, we've all kind of worked in the shops and stuff, but we also pit crew guys. So we've all had a little taste of changing tires and gassing cars and carrying tires and jacking and all this. But Timmy was probably our best pit crew guy. No, I mean, really.
Well, Daddy was pretty good.
Well,
too.
yeah, but I'm talking about just out of the three of us, you was probably the best guy at changing tires, because at one time you was sought after by a lot of big teams, wasn't you?
So that's where you're going to leave me with this? Well, I started out actually as a jack man, and man, I didn't weigh very much. I mean, I was a pretty small in stature guy when I first started.
And we're talking days when the jacks were still steel jacks.
Oh yeah. So
heavy.
They actually had an aluminum jack that they had made probably in the mid '70s. So I kind of took it, and I was going to machinist school, so I learned how to do some machine stuff. So I lightened up an Osco jack, and then I was the jack man. So how Daddy taught me how to go over the wall was, the rule was 2 away back then. It was pretty simple. And he held the back of my shirt like that, and when it was time to go, you stand on the wall and he just pushed me.
Shoved you, don't you?
So that was my jacking training. That's the extent of that. Well, then I decided, man, I kind of admired Dale, Wade, some other good tire changers from the day, and I had some friends. Well, yeah, all of them. They were very good at their craft, and I didn't realize how small of a world it was, but it was pretty small. So if y'all remember, I set up an old hub.
Oh, yeah.
And got the heaviest tires I could, because I couldn't hardly lift them, just to be honest with you. And we would take, instead of using the nitrogen bottles, we'd use the compressed air. Matter of fact, we'd do it down here sometimes.
Yep,
right out here at this shop.
Yep.
And but we made an old crate, and we just done some measuring, and that's all we did was just practice the pattern and change the tires. Here I am doing the talking this time.
Well, it's all about you. You had on this tire change deal, but you had to do that after work, right?
Right. We couldn't do it during
Or lunch period.
Right. I just remember getting home from school sometimes, and I would hear the air gun going from the house.
I can't tell you how many hundreds of times.
Yeah. Well, the modern day...
And you'd be over here practicing from this.
The modern day cup cars, whatever, they got one lug nut now, and it's kind of like the old Indy cars.
5 on 5.
When Timmy was doing it, it was the little lug nuts, and it was 5, and it was hard to hit them, wasn't it? Because you could run through there and miss them.
I practiced the pattern,
right?
Because I wasn't that big, and again, by all means,
This was back too. Don't sell yourself short. This is before the really light tire changing guns. They were still tire changing guns, but they were the old heavy ones, and they were a little bit slower. And then they sped them up. Remember how easy?
I dabbled in, because we made our own pit sockets. We had taken a 12-point socket, and we'd mill every other slot out of it. And Dale and all of them was doing that stuff, and learned a lot from them. But also, the Ingersoll Rand guy was really big at that time, Howard Hurd.
Yep.
And I'm sure a lot of the old timers remember Mr. Hurd, and very instrumental in pushing the craft of tire changing to another level. Anyway, I learned how to rebuild a single hammer, double hammer, and I know they're all over the board now. I mean, I'm kind of out of touch with it now, but
yeah, but then it was cutting edge.
Yeah, I mean, and I enjoyed it because it was something that I could improve on, and it went along with our machining stuff that we learned how to do, but anyway, yeah, it was fun. I mean, and you just prided yourself with being one of the best on pit road, and I mean, like you said, I was able to go change them here, and I actually got to change tires for the King. At a young age, and then I got moved, back to Kyle.
The 1983,
and with no shame in that, because that was the B team in jest.
But the 1983 Rockingham win, you was the tire changer on that deal.
Right, and I was had my overalls on because of Texas jeans and all that
What
stuff.
he's talking about with Richard Petty, that was a race.
That's right, the race win.
Petty and Neil Bonnet are into the pit area. There is Richard Petty getting some fresh rubber on the right side of that car. Now they move to the other side.
Very few and far between, but that was fun. Thanks for reminding me.
Tell us the story about when you. It was big for me, but when you went and changed tires for Tim Richmond.
Well, the King had moved off to
The
curb racing, and we were still kind of transitional.
1984, right?
Yeah, and actually worked here in the engine shop during the week, and then Kyle and that squad had kind of changed the whole atmosphere of what they had going on, and so I worked here during the week, and Tim Brewer had got injured at the shop. He'd cut his knee, a grinding disc had exploded, if I remember right. So they called me, and he said, "Hey, can you come up here and change tires for Blue Max?" And man, I love those guys. All the whole squad. Barry, and Barry Dotson, and I guess I need to finish the names because most people don't know who I'm talking about. But anyway, Harold Elliott was the head engine builder there, and I mean,
he was great.
Had nothing but respect for that guy through and through. And anyway, they would actually fly me out of Statesville on a King Air by myself, and here I'm just a kid. I thought I'd done the right. Other than being a driver, that was pretty big for me personally.
Right.
And I know I sound like I'm bragging. I apologize for that.
You should. It's something to brag about.
But I would go and get up early in the morning, and they'd fly me out, and I was just a weekend warrior. My job was to actually help set up the pits. I didn't have to touch the race car, which when I come home here, I was working in the engine shop. So anyway, it was a big deal. And then Brewer got better, and then he went back to change the tires, so that left me. They would have kept me on, but I was like, hey man, I was ready to change some tires.
My joke always was Tim Brewer got hurt, and they called Tim here to do it because he already had the uniforms. They had to make new uniforms.
Probably.
No, it's because he was a good tire changer.
No, and I appreciated the opportunity, and it gave me confidence to go forward with what I had going on for the next years of my life.
Yes, so
business.
Going forward from there, you
got a chronological of this thing?
Well, you went to
story.
you changed for Daddy
in 85, yeah.
And then you went over to Stravola in 86.
April 86 is when I first got hooked up with the Allman Brothers, and they all was at Stavola's, and a good friend of mine, Lanny Barnes, had started that season. And remember, we went down to Daytona, and that's when Hillen had wrecked everything they had, and they went over and got the show car in the Monte Carlo instead of a Buick. Anyway, Lanny was working there then, but I didn't start there till April. And the first day, other than meeting Keith and him hiring me, because Lanny said, hey, you need to go over and talk to these guys. So sure enough, I called, and you didn't have cell phones back then. You called, and Keith said, hey, yeah, let's talk. I need to talk to you. Went over there, got the job, and my first day at Stavola's was at North Wilkesboro with no pit wall, because that's the only place that was like that. And here I am changing front tires. I took Lanny's job. Lanny quit, went back to Baker's, and I started that job, which, by the way, thank you, Lanny. It really helped a young guy out with and just beginning my family on a personal level. So.
Well, then you changed up until, I guess, when you came back, we came back here. Then you went and helped with Butch Mock's team a couple.
Well, we all did.
Yeah,
but it was changing tires.
But it was pit support, and the Ranneman guys, Tex Evans, Franklin Lambert, Roger Heifel.
Yeah.
Who else? Ken Duan, which he wasn't from Ranneman, but he was
part of that gang.
And Bob Rahilly, Butch Mock, we would all ride together, and they would kind of cater and Lambert's Farm Store
Franklin
down here.
Pat.
Yeah.
Franklin and Pat would carry.
And my God, that was some good eating, wasn't it?
Lord,
But
yes.
but you changed for 4 or 5 races there because they
Well, they just needed somebody. They were kind of breaking up.
But then we were getting ready to go do our 53 days, and they
That was just to get us through.
no they needed somebody to get them through, but they thought enough of you because you was such a good tire changer. They brought you back in. But hang on, I'm gonna give a little. Going back to in time, there's a little show and tell.
Yeah.
This is what they started back in the 50s. That's what they'd change tires with, and then up into the I guess the Wood Brothers and people started bringing in the air guns
wrenches
and stuff. But this is early on, and guys could change tires pretty dadgum fast.
Some of them was almost as quick as air stuff.
They was quick.
Because they had them ball bearings in there.
The quickest I ever seen was old Blackjack that worked for Dennis Sitzer and him down there.
You could spin that thing.
Oh, yeah.
They had them all.
That
laid
was a
back.
real art.
Yeah.
It
Those
was.
guys.
Now I know we've probably told this story too, but I never can get away from it. But Daddy telling that story from the 1960 World 600, and they had 3 cars. You had grandfather and Uncle Richard and Bobby Johns, and he said one car would come in, and he was changing the right front, and then as soon as that car would go
Lee
out,
Petty is one of the 10. He loses control and spins out. Petty's crew break their backs to get the 60 Plymouth back in the money.
he said he changed tires on 3 different cars, and he never got a break. When the race was over, he finally got a breath.
Yeah.
All day long.
Yeah.
Well, Harry
had one
Hyde
pit crew.
actually said the same thing, that a lot of times they would do a conglomerate deal, and it was whoever was first in line. If you was first, second position, then the next on down the line, just like you said.
How you was running the race, how you coming.
But they just used what they had and the people they had, and I can imagine them being wore out for sure.
But through the years, the Petties and everybody else trying to get faster, trying to get better. Everybody's always working on their pit crew stuff and working on their guns and their jacks and their gas cans. But you was a big part of actually helping make stuff better, wasn't you?
Well, I mean, I can't take all the credit.
No, I said you helped.
But yeah, I took a lot of pride in all the stuff because I did the same thing you did.
Mm-hmm.
We went down here to Randolph Technical College, done the machinist course, and I really enjoyed that. I like making. To this day, we still make stuff, no matter how big or small. And I think it helped it because I had a knowledge of it, and that's what kept me kind of up to speed on it.
Well, I know when Mark would drive, and then we would either caraway or we'd be in his trucks or whatever, and I would change tires. You'd be on the front, I'd be on the rear. And you were a big help to me because I was from the driver's seat to the changing tires is a whole different ball game. And by watching you through the years, helped me. And then I'd have a little trouble. You'd come over there in the between stops. You'd always help me, say you need to do this and do that. But I wasn't very good at it, but I got better.
It's just patterns.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
because of your help, I got better at it.
Where was we at racing with Richie one time? We talked about tire changers. It's a good time to shout out, but a lot of times we run ARCA races. A lot of our good friends from the Cup side would come over and help do pit stops. But we was somewhere maybe like a standalone where we didn't. I mean, it was just 3 or 4 of us. It was me, you, and George Caldwell, and Richie, and Daddy, and maybe Phil Pendry. But actually jacked the car, and didn't you end up changing 3 tires?
I did it at Texas for you.
That's what I'm talking about, because I had to jack the car.
No, you was driving.
Oh, okay.
That was at Texas.
Well, I'm talking about one time when Richie was running an ARCA race. I jacked the car and went back and.
Well, they used to have that rule in the Bush deal.
Yep.
Where you had one tire changer, and he'd knock the lugs off, and then I guess the carrier could change it, but there was only one wrench, so I could do that.
Well, the one you're talking about with him was the wrench broke on me, and I had to go across the wall to get another wrench. By the time I got back with the backup, you'd already jumped over and changed the tires.
And,
the Texas truck race.
And you finished top 10 in that race.
Yeah. But
top 10 in a truck race
was pretty big then.
And there was at one time there was one guy changing the tires. Yeah. It was just and the King actually helped us in the pits that day.
But
we didn't have nobody else.
But you go back to we talking about the trucks now when 43 truck, when they went to live pit stops, they used to have them halftime deals. They went to live pit stops. You were a big deal, a big part of why the 43 team was so successful, because you had all that experience. And we were busting them out of the pits every time he'd come in. He'd pick up 2 or 3, wasn't he?
Yep.
It was one of them deals where all the stars and the moon lined
we had
up.
Timmy on the front tires, Darrell Lockyer, R.I.P. Darrell, on the rear tire, Travis jacked, I carried tires, and Clancy gassed, right?
Yep.
And we had Brent Slotty too, who carried tires, and did other. He also helped us through the years, even though he worked at the Petty's deal.
But remember the time we was at Nashville?
Yeah. This is a good one.
Travis tells the story.
This is a good one.
And we got in and out of the pit so quick that the pace car driver Dolan, wasn't it Dolan?
He said, "Wonder why the 43 didn't pit."
43 didn't pit, and they said he did.
They done in and out.
We were that far ahead of him for some reason.
But Timmy was a great tire changer.
No,
for sure.
Well, so was the Chief.
Well, the thing about Daddy was, and it's always amazing, he had that polio and he had trouble walking. But man, he could change some tires.
Tell me, it was all about the pattern.
It was good.
And the concentration.
Yeah.
And that's something we've all picked up and learned from
Daddy
him.
was so determined he could do anything.
Oh, he was going to get it done, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he was going to make sure that he did what he could to help that team win. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Easing down the pit road. His brother signals him to keep away from the fence. They're going to change all 4 tires on this pit stop. Now you'll see how a first-class crew operates. 8 seconds after he stopped, the right side is up and both tires off. Gas is pouring in from 10-gallon cans while Richard sits there calm as you please.
Well, you got any more stories you want to share with us? Because
I'm kind of blushing right now because y'all are bragging on me.
I'm enjoying listening to it because you were really a good tire changer.
Well, and it's like anything else in life. You got to enjoy what you're doing, and I really enjoyed that. And it wasn't that you was trying to beat everybody, but man, you wanted to be as good. I mean, because there were some good guys on pit road.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's competitive too.
Lord, yes.
That was competitive.
And you
you
wasn't going to get the job unless you could do the deal.
Yeah.
And if you remember, that was when it was wide open pit road.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
Yep.
Hey, speaking of, this has nothing to do with it. It was just borrow memory. But thinking of Daddy and them changing tires like at Darlington and stuff, there was no pit wall.
And
they were on the front stretch.
Yeah.
No, and I mean that's what I'm telling you. It's a whole other aspect, and you have to wrap your head around it. And there's people that's got hundreds of stories about those pit road experiences.
Well, I always thought you was one of the best, and I've always enjoyed watching you, and now I'm enjoying listening to the stories. And I wished we had.
I still didn't get to beat them flying asses.
All Wheel Land and them.
Yeah,
they were good. Yeah,
they took me to school a couple times, even though no matter how good you think I was, they took it to my butt.
Well, if you got any comments on tire changers or anything, or if you've seen Timmy in action, let us know and like and subscribe. Appreciate you.